Hi y'all, Ms. McCann here. Here to help you go through your review, make sure you got the right answers, and if you didn't, figure out where you went wrong. Let's start with that first item, the Best Buy card that Melanie received for her bat mitzvah. She got a $40 card. Every time she bought a PC game online, $2.50 was deducted from the card. If you can see here, I took the equation and kind of reflected back as to what it stood for. I do understand that the intercept and the rate of change per download are in different spots. So taking that information, I can answer here. 1A, what is the y-intercept? It would be $40 because we know that our initial value and our intercept are the same thing. So that's $40. What is the slope? Well, excuse me, per download. Okay, we know that it's deducting 200, that's an expensive game, 250. But when we represent it, it's negative 2.5. We don't need the extra zero, especially when we graph. 1B asks, what does the y-intercept mean in this context? This is one of those questions that's a math question that doesn't want a math number answer. Okay, it does reflect back to the word problem, the verbal description, and we take a look at what that y-intercept actually means. And in this context or this problem, it means that she starts with $40 on her card. Okay. Same thing here. We look back at the problem, figure out what it's asking. What does the slope mean in this context? So in this problem, slope is negative 2.5, or in context it's 250. So it means that 250 will be deducted every time she buys a game. That's slope in the real world. If Melanie downloads 9 games, how much money will be left on the card? To remind myself, I did rewrite my equation, y equals ms plus b. So I know that the amount left is going to be equal to the original 40 minus 250 per download. So we take what we know. She's going to download 9 games. So we're going to plug that in as our number of downloads. So our original $40 minus 250 times that 9 is $22.50. So the amount remaining is equal to 40 minus that $22.50, which is $17.50. Okay. How many games did Melanie purchase? If there's $12.50 remaining on the card, so it's kind of asking us to do the opposite. So we take our initial amount. We know we want to find out how much was spent. So we subtract that $12.50 and we get $27.50. We can then plug that in because we know that's the amount remaining, which is what our A stands for. And then we, excuse me, plug in our slope times hour. Now in order to solve this, we have to divide on both sides by that 2.5. Make sure that you show this when you're working, so that we see your understanding. Now, even if you're using a calculator, you want to represent that on your paper. And when you divide both sides, you end up with 11. So she had downloaded 11 games, and she has $12.50 left. So she still has more games to go. Please remember at any time you can pause, rewind, check your answers against mine, make sure you figure out what went wrong if something did so. Okay, item 2 talks about Elsa's mom putting pizza rolls in the refrigerator at 4 p.m. At this time, the box had 56 pizza rolls. What Elsa's mom did not expect was that Elsa and her friends were eating them at 6.5 pizza rolls an hour. You know, you never can have just enough. So sometimes there's a half a pizza roll eaten. So right here we've got our timeline, 4 to 8 p.m. That's a total of 4 hours. So our 0 hour, or our x, okay, at this time, we know when our x is equal to 0, our y is going to show us our intercept or our initial value. Okay, so that's how I kind of, that basic understanding of what's going on with the problem, figured out what the y-intercept was. So when x is 0 hours, there were 56 rolls left. So the y-intercept is 56. We know that from the verbal description, the slope, or what is constant, is negative 6.5. It's negative because they're eating them, so they're going away. Okay. 2C asks you to write an equation. Went back to our form, y equals mx plus b, and modeled it after that. So I came up with the letters R and H for rolls per hour. So the remaining rolls is going to be equal to that negative 6.5 times the hours that are eaten, plus the initial value. Okay, so my explanation below kind of explains how I came up with those letters. So R equals rolls remaining. H is the hours, should probably write spent eating, hours eating, or hours gone by. And then 56 is the initial value, or the number of rolls that they started with. Okay, boop. Let's fix that. Okay. The next section asks us if there were 4 pizza rolls left in the box, how many hours have passed? Okay, so I once again went back to y equals mx plus b. My rolls, here's my slope per hour and my initial value. Okay, so I know that I started with 56 rolls. There's 4 left, so I'm going to subtract that 4 to figure out how many were eaten. Okay, so over a time of negative 6.5 per hour, okay, we'll find out how many hours it was by dividing the amount that was eaten by that 6.5. And when you do that, both sides, you get 8 hours of pizza roll frenzy. Okay. This next question asks kind of the opposite. So at 10:30 p.m., that's a long time to eat pizza rolls, how many are left? At negative 6.5 an hour, we have to figure out how many hours they spent eating. So at 4 o'clock, we knew there were 56. From 4 o'clock to 10:30 is 6.5 hours that was spent eating. Okay, so we take our amount left. Okay, we multiply it times the number of rolls we know are eaten. Okay, per hour, and we end up with 42.25 pizza rolls have been eaten. So then we have to kind of think back and do the opposite. So we have to subtract that 56 whole rolls, oh goodness, by the amount we now know, have been eaten. Once again, if you are doing your math on a calculator, please make sure at least you write the problem down along with the answer. Okay. So we know you're going to have 3/4 of a roll left. Somebody didn't eat all their pizza rolls. You should have 13 3/4 of a pizza roll left. So by doing all of this, I'm showing my thinking. There is more than one way to do every problem. Please remember that. So if you ended up with the same answer, but did it a different way, you're still A-okay. Lots of different ways of thinking. Okay. Last item, number 3, asks you to use the equation to make a graph and answer the questions below. So as we make this graph, we're going to actually be figuring out these questions below. So y-intercept and slope. If we look at our normal form, y equals mx plus b, we know that d is the amount of dollars that will be the output. So that goes on our y-axis. 2h, hours, is going to be the amount of time that passes. That's already set ahead. Time doesn't slow down for anybody. So that's going to be our x. We know b is our initial value or our intercept. So that's where our line on the graph will start. So we can put a point at 1. Okay, looking at the slope, which is our m, we know slope is rise over run. So it's going to be 2 over 1. So every time we rise 2, we go over 1. Rise 2, we go over 1. And we have a nice line that shows the dollars per hour. Okay, from that information and just from graphing it, we know immediately what the y-intercept is. The y-intercept is 1 and the slope is 2. Okay, we calculated that earlier. Verbal description, you can write a story that matches that graph. I started my story out. Michelle is a dog walker, and for every dog she signs up, she gets $1 plus 2 additional dollars an hour. That's a pretty cheap dog walker, but I would go on to describe how she walked her dog or somebody else's dog. And it looks like she went 2.5 hours according to my graph where I stopped. That's a great story to go along with our graph. Please make sure that you include enough details so that we can see, the story that goes along with that equation. Okay, I hope that you were successful in your completion. If you have any questions, please make sure that you do additional research. Khan Academy is a great resource, as are your teachers' websites. So thanks, good luck, and study hard for your quiz tomorrow.